You've been told that to win her heart, you need to impress her, chase her, prove yourself. But what if the truth is the opposite? What if the key to attracting the woman you truly want is to stop chasing and start becoming? What if everything you're looking for begins the moment you master your mind, control your emotions, and walk like a man who doesn't need to be chosen because he's already chosen himself? This isn't game. This is philosophy. This is power. This is Stoicism. You train your mind the way a warrior trains his sword. You pause before reacting. You reflect before speaking. You breathe through discomfort. You sit with jealousy. You don't avoid emotion. You absorb it without being swept away. And slowly, you become unshakable. Epictetus reminded us, it's not things that upset us, but our judgment about them. The way she responds, or doesn't, is not the problem. Your interpretation of it is. Straighten your spine. Let her go. Not with anger, but with grace. Not because you weren't good enough, but because now you are becoming something even greater. Unshakable. Part 12. Real love begins with self-respect. Before a woman can trust you, respect you, or love you, you must first learn to respect yourself. Not superficially, not performatively, but deeply, unshakably, without needing applause or confirmation. Because self-respect is the foundation of all attraction, and without it, everything else crumbles. No matter how charming you are, how confident you act, or how much you think you love her. You see, most men confuse self-esteem with ego. They believe that if they puff their chest, speak boldly, or don't care, they're showing strength. But real self-respect isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It's quiet, rooted, expressed not in words, but in choices. It's the man who walks away from disrespect without drama. The man who enforces his boundaries not with threats, but with consistency. The man who doesn't betray his own standards to please someone, even if he's wildly attracted to her. Seneca said, "A man is as miserable as he thinks he is, and the man who constantly tolerates behavior beneath his worth, who begs, who overextends, who forgives the inexcusable out of fear, becomes miserable not because of what she does, but because of what he allows. Because every time you accept less than you deserve, a piece of you dies inside. And no amount of affection or validation will fix the damage you do to yourself by staying somewhere that your soul has outgrown. Self-respect isn't about being perfect. It's about being aligned. It's about knowing your values and living them, even when it's inconvenient, even when you're afraid to lose her. Especially then, a woman may be drawn to your presence, your looks, your words, but she will only stay for your integrity. And if she senses that you fold easily, that your boundaries are negotiable, that your self-worth depends on her approval, she will slowly begin to lose the one thing that truly makes a man attractive, her respect for him. The Stoic man knows this. He doesn't pretend to be unaffected. He feels everything, but nothing controls him. He does not allow desire to override his dignity. He does not allow lust to cloud his logic. He is not afraid to say, "This doesn't work for me," even if it means losing her. You can admire her beauty and still walk away when she crosses your line. You can desire her deeply and still say no when she disrespects your time. You can love her truly and still put yourself first when the relationship costs you your peace. That is not selfishness. That is strength. A man without self-respect will always be chasing love. A man with self-respect attracts it, naturally, effortlessly, magnetically. Because women trust what is rooted. They may flirt with chaos, but they anchor themselves in steadiness, and you cannot be steady if you keep abandoning yourself. So tonight, ask yourself with brutal honesty, where have I tolerated too much? Where have I betrayed my own standards just to be chosen? Where have I said yes when my soul was screaming no? And then ask, what would it look like to finally respect myself so deeply that I never needed someone else to remind me of my worth. Because that's where real love begins. When you stop trying to prove yourself and start walking like a man who already knows who he is. Part 13. Don't let her silence break you. Let it reveal you. There will be moments, maybe it's already happened, when she goes quiet. Not hostile, not dramatic. Just absent. No replies, no calls, no warmth. The same woman who once leaned in now leans away, and the space she once filled becomes a vacuum that pulls at your mind, at your chest, at your sense of worth. And in that silence, most men panic. They reach, over-explain, send one more message, then another, then they spiral. They begin to question everything. Did I say too much? Did I say too little? Should I have played it cooler? Was I too honest? Was I not enough? But the Stoic man does something different. He doesn't collapse into the silence. He enters it, not as a victim, but as a warrior walking into a sacred test. Because he knows this truth. Silence is not an answer, but it's always a revelation. It reveals her readiness. It reveals your wounds. It reveals your relationship with stillness. And your power lies in that gap, the space between stimulus and response. That's where masculinity lives. That's where attraction begins. So tonight, think about where you lost control today. Was it jealousy? Insecurity? Did you say too much? Reach too far? Were you anxious when you didn't get the attention you wanted? No shame, no judgment, just awareness. Because awareness is the beginning of change. Tomorrow, practice presence. Respond instead of reacting. And most of all, it reveals how much of your identity has been invested in her response. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion. What she does or doesn't say is not what hurts. It's what you think it means. It's your craving for control. It's your addiction to certainty. It's the voice in your head that says, you are only worthy when you are seen." But here's where the transformation begins. When you stop chasing signals and start mastering yourself. When you sit in the silence, not with desperation, but with discipline. You feel the discomfort. You name the emotions. And you stay. You don't fill the void. You don't escape into noise. You stay. And you observe the part of you that still thinks love must be proven. The part that still wants to be rescued. The part that still hands his peace to someone else's timing. This is where most men fall apart. But this is where you rise. Because if her silence can shake you, then she is not the problem. Your foundation is. If you need her to speak for you to feel seen, if you need her to answer for you to feel calm, if you need her attention to validate your masculinity, then you have not yet met yourself deeply enough. The Stoic path demands that you find stability in solitude, that you cultivate a kind of presence so rooted, so grounded, so clear, that even when the woman you desire withdraws, you don't disappear with her. This isn't coldness, this is clarity. You can love her deeply and still not beg. You can miss her presence and still hold your boundary. You can hope for her return without putting your life on pause. You don't chase what is unclear. You don't interrogate her silence. You don't punish her or pedestal her. You simply observe. And in that observation, you remember, your value is not on trial. Your peace is not pending her message. Your manhood is not measured by how often she responds. You are already whole, and her silence is simply the mirror reminding you where you still forget. So tonight, if she's quiet, let her be. Breathe. Come back to your mission, to your breath, to your body, to your path. Because if you can sit through her silence with calm, you'll become the kind of man who no longer fears it. And that kind of man is the one who commands true respect. Part 14. You don't need to do more. You need to be rooted in who you are. Most men, when they feel a woman pulling away, try to do more. More texts, more affection, more attention, more planning, more convincing, more proving. They scramble to close the distance with effort, thinking if they can just say the right thing, show the right gesture, or be the perfect man, she will come back, she will stay, she will choose them again. But here's the truth, and it's not an easy one. Doing more is not always the answer. Sometimes it's the problem. Because doing more often comes from fear, from lack, from the subtle but deadly belief that who I am is not enough. That belief poisons everything. It makes every message feel like a plea, every kind gesture feel like a transaction, every act of love feel like a negotiation for worth. But the Stoic man, he walks a different path. He doesn't perform. He doesn't overcompensate. He doesn't grasp. He stands, rooted, centered, grounded in who he is, regardless of whether she sees it or not. Seneca said, "A gem cannot be polished without friction, nor a man perfected without trials." And when a woman distances herself, when the friction of uncertainty rises, the Stoic man sees it not as a command to prove, but as an invitation to refine. He doesn't say, "What more can I do to keep her?" He asks, "How can I be even more aligned with the man I've chosen to become?" You see, doing more when you're disconnected from your center is not strength. It's noise. It's panic wrapped in action. It's movement without depth. And she can feel that. Women are deeply intuitive. They sense the energy behind your words, behind your gifts, behind your presence. If it's coming from anxiety, from emotional urgency, from a need to secure her affection, she won't feel loved. She'll feel burdened, smothered, or worse, responsible for your emotional survival. And no woman wants to carry that weight. But when you're rooted, truly rooted, everything changes. You're no longer reacting. You're responding. You're no longer chasing. You're choosing. Feel, but do not follow every feeling. Watch your thoughts like a philosopher, not a puppet. Speak only what serves your standards. Act only from alignment, not from lack. And slowly, without chasing, without forcing, she will feel something different in you. A calm, a weight, a man. Not just another guy trying to win her, but a man so grounded he cannot be ignored. That is emotional control. That is Stoicism in motion. You're no longer trying to impress her. You're expressing yourself authentically, with or without a reward. And that kind of presence is magnetic, not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Rooted men don't ask, "What more can I do to make her stay?" They ask, "If she walks, will I still respect myself?" And if the answer is yes, you're ready for anything. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. The pain you feel when she pulls away isn't about her. It's about your interpretation, your fear, your craving, your desire to be needed. But the Stoic man doesn't crave to be needed. He craves to be honest. He craves to be whole. He craves to walk in truth, even when it costs him comfort. So ask yourself now, where in your life are you trying too hard to be chosen? Where are you doing too much because you're afraid of being left behind? Where are you performing instead of being? And then ask, what would it feel like to slow down and just stand? To stand in your worth, to stand in your values, to stand in your truth. Because sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is not to chase, but to stay still. And in that stillness, you become a mirror. She will see herself. She will feel your strength. She will know. This is not a man who can be moved by mood swings or silence or confusion. This is a man who is whole, and the choice becomes hers. But the power, the calm, remains yours. Part 15. Love, like a Stoic, with depth, without attachment. To love, like most men, is to cling, to control, to grip tightly and never let go. It's to fall into passion without discipline, to confuse possession with connection, to equate closeness with ownership. But that is not Stoic love. That is emotional chaos, painted over with romantic words. That is attachment disguised as care. That is fear wearing the mask of devotion. A Stoic loves differently. He loves without losing himself. He loves without needing to be needed. He loves not from hunger, but from wholeness. And when you love like that, you become the rarest kind of man in her world. A man who is present, but never desperate. A man who gives fully, but never abandons his center. A man who would rather lose her than lose himself. Seneca wrote, "He who fears, he shall suffer, already suffers what he fears." And so many men fear the loss of love so deeply, they never allow themselves to love from strength. They build connections from control. They guard themselves with manipulation. They try to secure what cannot be secured, the heart of another, by becoming something they're not. But the Stoic refuses to play that game. He understands that love is not about certainty. It's about vulnerability, wrapped in sovereignty. It's about giving your heart freely while keeping your soul intact. It's about saying, "I choose you, not because I can't live without you, but because I've built a life so full, so rich, so rooted, that sharing it with you would be a blessing, not a requirement." The Stoic man does not fear love. He welcomes it, but he doesn't worship it. He doesn't trade his identity to maintain it. He doesn't seek to control or possess or cling. He walks beside her, not behind her. He leads beside her, not above her. And if the time comes for her to walk away, he lets her go with grace, because he knows true love is not about keeping. It's about witnessing, about meeting, about giving what you have without asking for more than what's freely offered. When a woman meets a man like this, something shifts. She feels it. She leans in, not because he pulls, but because he doesn't. Not because he promises her everything, but because he promises himself to his path. And that kind of love, the kind without strings, without pressure, without fear, is magnetic. Ask yourself now, do I love with freedom, or do I love with control? Do I offer presence, or do I seek possession? Do I stay true to myself, even when I'm afraid to lose her? Because the moment you shift from clinging to holding, from forcing to flowing, you transform. You become the kind of man who no longer fears love or its loss. You become the man who gives love that heals rather than love that hurts. You become the man who can sit across from her, look her in the eye, and say, "I want you, but I don't need to own you. I care for you, but I will never abandon myself to keep you. And if you leave, I will not collapse, because I loved you with truth, and I lived with honor." That is Stoic love. It is not empty. It is not cold. It is not detached. That is how you begin to attract the woman you truly want, not by seeking her, but by becoming the kind of man she cannot help but respect. Part 2. Let go of the need to control the outcome. One of the deepest obstacles that men face in the pursuit of love, especially when it involves a woman they truly desire, is the compulsive need to control the outcome. They want to know what she feels. They want to predict what will happen. They want assurance that their efforts will pay off. It is steady. It is deep. It is unbreakable. And the man who learns to love like that never has to chase again. And in that very craving for control, they lose the very thing that makes them attractive: presence, peace, and power. The Stoics teach that there is a hard line between what is within your control and what is not, and outcomes, the future, the reactions of others, whether she stays or goes, are never in your control. What is? Your principles, your decisions, your integrity, and your willingness to show up fully without needing to manipulate the result. When you let go of the outcome, you regain yourself. You stop acting out of fear. You stop trying to convince her. You stop trying to engineer desire. And in doing so, you return to your natural state, grounded, relaxed, magnetic. Most men don't realize how transparent their desire for control makes them. It leaks through their tone, their body language, their jokes. And no matter how subtle it is, a woman feels it. That tightness, that need for something to happen. It becomes heavy, and the mystery is gone. But the man who can love without grasping, who can pursue without begging, who can walk away without crumbling, that man is rare. That man is free. That man is irresistible, not because of what he does, but because of what he does not need. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, if you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And when you shift your judgment from "I need her to respond this way" to "I am at peace no matter what," you step into your true power. The Stoics would call this living according to nature, not resisting reality, but flowing with it, facing it head on, without complaint or desperation. Let's make it concrete. You text her, she doesn't reply. What do? The average man waits anxiously, double texts, spirals in his head, checks her Instagram, compares himself to others, creates a dozen stories about why she's pulling away. But the Stoic man observes. He feels the tug of anxiety, but doesn't become it. He breathes. He lets the silence speak. He focuses on his life, his mission, his craft, his discipline. He returns his attention to where his power lives. And if she never replies, he accepts it with calm. He doesn't beg. He doesn't chase. Because his value was never on trial, and her silence does not define his worth. When you act from this place, something changes. You stop radiating pressure. You begin to radiate peace. And women feel it. They may not know what it is, but they feel the lack of need, the quiet strength, the inner independence. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you are not dependent. Most men fall into one of two traps: apathy or attachment. And once you understand these 15 lessons, you'll never look at love or yourself the same way again. Part 1. Emotional control is the foundation of true attraction. In the chaos of modern dating, one truth remains untouched by time, unchanged by trends, and unshaken by opinions. A man who controls his emotions controls his life. And to the Stoics, this was not just a virtue, it was a requirement. They either close their hearts to protect themselves, or they open them recklessly and become consumed. The Stoic lives in the middle, open but anchored, receptive but non-clinging, loving but never losing himself. And here's the irony: when you let go of needing a specific outcome, you become more likely to attract it, not because you're manipulating, but because you're finally authentic, relaxed, free from the invisible tension that repels the very intimacy you long for. Ask yourself, how often do I try to force results? How often do I act from fear rather than from alignment? When was the last time I simply showed up fully, gave freely, and let life unfold without interference? Letting go of the outcome doesn't mean being passive. It means being present. It means being so focused on who you are being that you are no longer obsessed with what you are getting. It means returning again and again to the only domain that belongs to you: your own mind, your own character, your own actions. The Stoic man knows that the universe owes him nothing. that no woman is a reward and no response is a guarantee. He shows up anyway, with intention, with honesty, with calm, and that's precisely why he is respected. Tonight, reflect on where in your life you are holding too tightly. What are you trying to control that does not belong to you? Can you release it, not with resignation, but with strength? Can you trust that by staying rooted in your values, the right people and moments will stay, and the rest can go in peace? Because the truth is this: you do not control how she feels. You do not control what happens next, but you do control how you carry yourself through it, and that makes all the difference. Part 3. Never idolize her. She is not above you. You. One of the most common and most destructive mistakes men make when they meet a woman they truly desire is this: they place her on a pedestal, they glorify her, idolize her, turn her into a fantasy instead of seeing her as a human being. And in doing so, they shrink themselves. They abandon their own value. They surrender their power, not to love, but to illusion. This is not Stoicism. This is emotional slavery. The Stoics teach us to see reality clearly, as it is, not as we wish it to be. And when you idolize a woman, when you convince yourself that she is the one, that no one else compares, that your happiness depends on her attention, you are no longer seeing clearly. You're projecting, you're fabricating. You are no longer relating to her soul. You are worshiping an image you created in your mind. And what happens when you worship someone? You lower yourself beneath them. You see yourself as unworthy. You begin to tolerate behavior that goes against your principles. You abandon your standards. You sacrifice your dignity. All in the name of love. But it is not love. It is need. It is fear. It is self-betrayal, disguised as devotion. No Stoic ever bowed before another human being out of insecurity. Marcus Aurelius ruled the Roman Empire, but he reminded himself daily that emperors and beggars end up in the same dust. He never placed others above him, and he never placed himself above others. He walked as an equal among all, firm, grounded, and humble. That's how you must walk, especially with the woman you desire. See her, appreciate her, be drawn to her beauty, her intelligence, her energy, but do not idolize her. Do not turn her into something sacred that your entire worth depends upon. She is human, she is flawed, she is figuring herself out just like you. And if she senses that you are worshiping her instead of standing beside her, she will not feel attraction. She will feel pressure. She will feel the imbalance, and she will pull away. You see, women want to feel your presence, not your pedestal. They want to be seen, not exalted. The moment you make her the center of your universe, she stops being drawn to your gravity. She begins to orbit elsewhere. The Stoic understands this. He never overvalues what is not in his control, and her attention, her validation, her approval are never his to own. He knows his worth does not increase because she chooses him, and it does not decrease if she does not. Epictetus said, "If you want to be loved, love yourself first." That doesn't mean selfishness. It means solidity. It means never abandoning yourself just to be chosen. It means never shrinking in the presence of someone just because you admire them. If you want to attract the woman you truly desire, not a fleeting infatuation, not a shallow fling, but a real connection with someone of depth, then emotional mastery must become your first weapon. Not because emotions are bad, but because a man who is ruled by them becomes a slave to the unpredictable. You cannot expect to lead your life or a relationship if your emotions lead you, if your state of mind crumbles with a single unanswered message. Ask yourself honestly, have you ever tried to impress her more than you've tried to be yourself? Have you ever held back your truth just to avoid upsetting her? Have you ever ignored red flags because you didn't want to lose the chance of being with her? That's not strength. That's fear dressed in charm. That's manipulation of the self. And it always leads to the same place: resentment, imbalance, disconnection. The Stoic path is different. You don't chase. You don't beg. You don't worship. You simply become the kind of man who does not need to idolize, because he is already whole. And if she walks beside you, good. If she doesn't, good. You are never incomplete. Women are not attracted to men who make them their god. They are attracted to men who walk in purpose, who live by principles, who are not shaken by beauty or seduced by fantasy. They are drawn to men who are clear-eyed, who can say, "I see your value, but I do not place you above my self-respect." That is power. That is balance. That is Stoic love, fierce, honest, and always free. So tonight, reflect. Where have you placed a woman above yourself? Where have you made her your source of happiness? And are you ready, truly ready, to take her off the pedestal and see her clearly? Because only when you do can real connection begin. Part 4. Self-discipline is the highest form of masculine energy. Attracting the woman you truly want isn't about tricks, lines, or external validation. It's about one thing: the energy you bring into the world. And that energy, masculine energy in its purest form, is not loud, boastful, or chaotic. It's silent, focused, and deeply grounded. And nothing grounds a man more powerfully than self-discipline. In Stoicism, self-discipline is not just a habit, it is a virtue. One of the 4 cardinal virtues, in fact, along with wisdom, courage, and justice, temperantia, temperance, or moderation, was seen as the inner muscle that allows all other strengths to function. Without self-discipline, a man is ruled by his appetites, his moods, and his weaknesses. He is a leaf in the wind, distracted, reactive, unstable. But with it, he becomes a mountain, a force, a man whose presence speaks louder than his words. So what does this have to do with attraction? Everything. When a woman meets a man who is disciplined, she feels something different. She may not be able to articulate it, but she can sense it. The way he speaks, the way he listens, the way he moves without rushing, the way he keeps his word, the way he doesn't fold under pressure, the way he doesn't seek validation, because his identity is not on loan from others. He is governed, not by impulse, but by principle. And this is rare, because most men today are trapped in distraction. They scroll endlessly. They chase dopamine. They make promises they don't keep. They say yes when they should say no. They live in cycles of temporary pleasure followed by long-term regret. And women can feel that, not just through behavior, but energetically. A man who cannot lead himself cannot lead anyone else. And leadership, not dominance, but direction, is the essence of attraction. The Stoic man is different. He wakes up with intention. He sets boundaries, not just with others, but with himself. He trains his mind like a warrior trains his sword. He practices stillness when his emotions want to explode. He chooses discipline in moments of temptation, not because he's trying to impress anyone, but because his life depends on it, because his peace depends on it, because his integrity demands it. Imagine a man who doesn't reach for his phone first thing in the morning, but sits in silence with his thoughts, who trains his body not for vanity, but for vitality, who studies philosophy not for debate, but for direction, who speaks little, but with weight, who doesn't chase women, not because he's indifferent, but because he's building something bigger than himself. That is a man women feel safe with. That is a man they feel drawn to, not just for romance, but for respect. Marcus Aurelius ruled the most powerful empire on earth, yet he practiced self-denial every day. He ate simply. He lived modestly. He wrote constantly, not because he had to, but because he chose to master himself before life could master him. That is the model, not the loud, arrogant, reactive man, but the still, sovereign, centered one. Ask yourself, where am I out of control? What rules my day, my schedule, or my impulses? Do I follow through on what I say? Do I delay gratification? Or do I sell my soul for temporary pleasure? Because every time you choose discipline, you reclaim power. If your confidence deflates at the sight of her smile aimed at someone else, if your mood swings depending on how much attention she gives you, that is not strength, it is dependency. And women, especially women of substance, sense it immediately. They might not articulate it, but they feel it. The emotional volatility, the subtle neediness, the desperation hidden beneath charm. It repels them because nature has wired them to look for stability, to feel safe around certainty. Every time you say no to what weakens you, you say yes to who you're becoming. And when you meet her, the woman who sees you, she won't care about your followers, your bank account, your car. She'll feel your presence. She'll feel your control. She'll feel your clarity. She'll sense that you don't need her. And that's why she'll want to stand beside you, not because you demanded her attention, but because you earned her respect. So tonight, reflect. Where am I being led by emotion, by habit, by comfort? And where can I tighten the reins? Not to be perfect, but to be powerful. Not for applause, but for alignment. Because in the end, attraction is not about chasing her. It's about leading yourself. And the man who leads himself will never lack love. Part 5. Become the man you admire before expecting love from anyone else. Before you ask the world to love you, you must become the kind of man you respect. Before you seek deep connection, you must forge deep integrity. Before you long for a woman who sees you, supports you, believes in you, you must become the kind of man who deserves to be seen, supported, and believed in. This is not about earning love through perfection. It's about aligning your life with what's real. And in Stoicism, what's real is virtue, not appearance, not talk, not charm, but who you are when no one's watching. The Stoics didn't waste time begging the world to approve of them. They turned inward. They measured themselves against reason, principle, and conscience. Epictetus told his students, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." And that's what you must do. You don't need to explain why you deserve love. You need to become a living embodiment of the kind of man who gives love from abundance, not lack. Many men say they want a woman of depth, someone loyal, grounded, honest, radiant. But ask yourself honestly, are you living with those same qualities? Or are you looking to be completed by someone else's wholeness because you haven't yet claimed your own? This is the hard truth. The woman you're dreaming of, the one who inspires you, challenges you, awakens you, she's not looking for someone to save. She's not looking for a project. She's looking for a partner, someone who has done the work, someone who doesn't crumble under pressure, someone who can carry his own weight, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, someone who doesn't just want love, but who is love in action. Stoicism teaches that we are not born complete. We become through our decisions, through our habits, through our discipline. Every day, you are either walking toward your higher self or away from him. There is no neutral. Your words either build truth or erode it. Your actions either create momentum or waste potential. So what kind of man do you admire? Not the one who gets the most attention, but the one who walks with dignity, who keeps his promises, who lives simply but with meaning, who doesn't seek to impress, but to impact, who doesn't boast, but builds, who doesn't consume, but contributes. The man who, when no one's watching, still trains, still prays, still writes, still reflects, still grows. That's the man you must become, not for her, but for you. Because the irony is this: once you become that man, you no longer need to chase anyone. You don't need to force anything. You attract naturally, not by trying to be something, but by being everything you were meant to be. Marcus Aurelius never waited for praise. He simply lived rightly. Seneca never depended on applause. He crafted himself with philosophy and restraint. These men didn't seek perfection, but they sought truth. They asked themselves daily, am I living in accordance with nature, with virtue, with who I claim to be? And if the answer was no, they adjusted, without shame, without ego, just discipline. You must do the same. Make a list tonight, not of what you want in a woman, but of what you must become as a man. Are you honest, patient, focused, kind under pressure? Do you walk away from what dishonors your standards? Do you speak with weight or with noise? The greatest love you can offer anyone is a version of yourself that you admire, not flawless, not overcompensating, but whole. And when she enters your life, the right woman, not the fantasy, she won't fall in love with your image. She'll fall in love with your substance, not the mask, but the man, because you won't be performing. And that kind of certainty can only come from within. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is not a quote to admire. It is a challenge to live by. Your power does not lie in being the funniest guy in the room, or the richest, or the best looking. Your power lies in being unshaken, in being calm when others overreact, in being composed when things don't go your way. You'll be living. And when a man lives in alignment with who he says he is, he doesn't need to ask for love. He becomes the kind of man love finds. Part 6. Real love does not come from the fear of being abandoned. A man who fears being abandoned is a man who will always betray himself first, because before she leaves, he will have already left his own center. Before she says goodbye, he will have compromised his truth. And before she pulls away, he will have chased her with a desperation that reveals one thing above all: he has forgotten who he is. Stoicism teaches that fear is not to be obeyed. It is to be examined, understood, and then released. And few fears grip the modern man more than the fear of abandonment. It hides beneath his compliments. It lingers in his over-apologies. It drives him to tolerate what he knows he shouldn't, to stay when he should walk away, to beg for love rather than embody it. But a man cannot be loved properly if he is ruled by fear, because fear distorts everything. It creates neediness where there should be presence. It creates performance where there should be authenticity. It creates emotional chaos where there should be calm. True love, Stoic love, is not a reaction to fear. It is a practice of strength. It is given from fullness, not emptiness, from clarity, not confusion, from a sense of inner abundance, not emotional starvation. And that kind of love can only emerge from a man who is not afraid to be alone, a man who knows, if she leaves, I will not crumble. If she stays, I will not worship. I will continue to stand in who I am, regardless of who stands next to me. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment." That the Stoic understands. Abandonment is not the end, it is a moment. And like all moments, it is only painful if he assigns it the meaning of loss. But if he sees it clearly, without ego, without panic, he may come to realize, perhaps she did not abandon him. Perhaps she simply returned to her own path. Perhaps what left was never truly his. This mindset doesn't make you heartless. It makes you whole. You stop clinging. You stop trying to manipulate fate. You stop seeing love as a guarantee, and instead, you begin to see it as a gift. A sacred gift that can only be given freely, not squeezed from someone under pressure. If you fear being abandoned, pause and ask, what are you truly afraid of? That you're unworthy? That you'll be alone forever? That you'll never find something like this again? None of those fears are rooted in fact. They are echoes of old wounds, old scripts, old stories you were told or began telling yourself long ago. And the Stoic man rewrites his own story. He does not cling to people. He does not beg for comfort. He faces his fear head on and says, I am willing to lose anything that is not aligned with who I am becoming. That includes comfort. That includes attachment. That includes people. Because I trust, not in fate, but in the strength of the man I've built. A woman does not want to carry your abandonment wounds. She may try, she may empathize, but eventually, she will pull away if you keep making her responsible for your inner world. Love cannot breathe in a relationship where fear is the foundation, and you cannot attract a woman of substance if you are constantly negotiating your worth with her. The answer is not to suppress your fears, but to transcend them, to do the inner work, to remember that solitude is not punishment, it is training. It is the arena where you learn to become so whole that anyone who enters your life is a choice, not a necessity. You choose her, not because you need her to heal you, but because you want to build something together, as equals, as allies, as individuals who are whole on their own, but stronger in union. Tonight, reflect. Do I fear her leaving more than I fear betraying myself? Have I given her the power to determine my peace? Have I clung, chased, begged, compromised, all because I didn't want to feel alone? If so, forgive yourself. You're human, but now it's time to rise. Not by closing your heart, but by anchoring it. Because a man who is unafraid of being alone is the one most ready for love, ready in being able to experience intense emotion, attraction, jealousy, excitement, fear, and still choose your response, rather than be driven by it. Every time you message her and wait for a reply, your mind will offer you a storm of interpretations. She's not interested. She's playing games. I said something wrong. The Stoic man sees these thoughts rise, but does not grab hold of them. He watches them pass like clouds. Part 7. Learn to be alone before you try to be with someone. If you cannot sit with yourself in silence without reaching for a screen, a drink, or a body to distract you, then you are not ready to be with anyone. Because if your aloneness feels like punishment, you will enter relationships from a place of emptiness, not fullness. And from that place, love becomes dependence, not freedom. The Stoics were not afraid of solitude. They embraced it. They walked with it. They wrote from it. They built their strength not in crowds, not in conquest, but in the quiet, disciplined spaces where no one else was watching. The modern man fears solitude because he has never truly known it. He confuses loneliness with being alone. But they are not the same. Loneliness is the fear of being with yourself. Solitude is the mastery of it. And only in solitude do you meet the man behind the masks. Only in solitude do you hear the voice beneath the noise. And only in solitude do you begin the real work, the work of becoming who you were born to be. How can you attract a woman of depth, of soul, of dignity, if you have never truly known your own? If every moment alone feels like a void you must fill, then you will approach relationships like a man starving, consuming anything and everything just to feel full. But love cannot grow in hunger. It requires space, stillness, self-possession, and that can only be forged in the fire of solitude. Marcus Aurelius said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." He ruled an empire, yet found peace not in his throne, but in his inner temple. That is where you must build your strength, not in her approval, not in sex, not in validation, but in the unshakable presence of yourself. Being alone is not a season to survive. It is a season to rise, to cultivate, to study, to train, to face the parts of yourself you have ignored, to sit with discomfort until it becomes clarity, to walk through the shadows until they lose their grip. The Stoic man does not run from aloneness. He enters it like a forge and comes out sharper, cleaner, calmer. Many men avoid this. They jump from connection to connection, from chase to chase, from novelty to novelty, but their hearts remain scattered, their minds distracted, their self-worth fragile, because they have never stood still long enough to meet their core, and so they ask others to carry what they themselves have not mastered. The man who has walked through solitude, who has cried alone and risen alone, who has sat in silence long enough to hear his own truth, that man does not fear being left. He does not chase recklessly. He does not beg for presence. He chooses. He leads. He loves. Not with need, but with sovereignty. Ask yourself, when was the last time you sat alone without reaching for something to numb you? Can you go a day without escaping into distraction? Can you sit in a room with your thoughts and feel peace? Not because everything is perfect, but because you are no longer afraid. This is the work. Not glamorous, not easy, but sacred. And when you've done it, when you've found your rhythm in solitude, the world feels different. Women respond differently. Not because of your looks or charm, but because they feel your stability, your depth, your calm. They know, this man does not need me to feel whole. And that's why they trust you. That's why they want to walk beside you. Because in a world full of men looking to be saved, you are the one who already came home to yourself. Tonight, don't fear the silence. Enter it. Let it strip away what is not you. Let it introduce you to the man beneath the noise. And when that man begins to speak, listen. Because when you are finally comfortable with being alone, you'll stop settling for half connections, and you'll start attracting a love that mirrors your depth. Part 8. Stop trying to impress. Start living by principle. Every man, at some point, falls into the trap of trying to impress a woman. He curates his words. He shapes his behavior. He studies what she likes, what she wants, what she reacts to, and slowly, without even realizing it, he begins to drift, away from his center, away from his truth, away from who he really is. His life becomes a performance, his presence becomes a strategy, and his energy becomes manipulative, even if it's wrapped in charm. But Stoicism offers a different path. It tells you, stop performing, stop chasing approval, stop bending yourself into something you're not. Instead, live by principle. He returns to what is in his control, his actions, his standards, his focus. He does not chase answers. He does not spiral. He stands tall, unmoved, because his worth is not tied to her reaction. It is anchored in his character. You might be tempted to think that showing how much you care, how much you need her, how much she matters to you, will win her over. But true attraction does not grow in the soil of emotional chaos. It grows in the space of grounded presence. A man who lives by principle doesn't speak to impress. He speaks to express. He doesn't act for applause. He acts from alignment. He does not twist himself into a version he thinks she wants. He lives in truth, whether she stays or walks away. Seneca said, "We should not live as if we had 1,000 years ahead of us. Fate is at our elbow." If this is true, and it is, then why waste time pretending? Why waste time trying to be liked when you could be living with integrity? Why chase validation when you could be building virtue. The man who lives by principle knows what he stands for. He has a code, not borrowed, not trendy, but forged through trial, reflection, and solitude. And he carries that code into every interaction. Whether he's alone or surrounded, whether he's with the woman of his dreams or in silence, he remains steady. His posture doesn't change. His soul does not fluctuate with attention. And you know what happens? Women notice, not because he's trying to be noticed, but because groundedness is rare. In a world of men who shift with every mood, every trend, every feminine test, a man who knows himself becomes a lighthouse. She may not understand it at first. She may even test it. But over time, she'll feel it, that this man cannot be moved off his foundation just to please her. It's attractive, it's powerful, it's trustworthy. But make no mistake, it's not about dominance. This is not about being cold or arrogant. It's about being rooted. When you live by principle, you are not afraid to say no. You are not afraid to disagree. You are not afraid to disappoint when staying true to yourself is the cost. And ironically, it is that very strength, the willingness to lose her rather than lose yourself, that earns her deepest respect. Women are not looking for perfection. They are looking for authenticity, for consistency, for truth. A man who says what he means. A man who does what he says. A man who lives the same when she's looking and when she's not. Ask yourself, where am I pretending? Where am I hiding my truth to keep someone interested? Where have I traded principle for performance? And more importantly, who would I be if I stopped chasing approval and started living in full alignment with who I am? Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." Let that guide you. Don't tell her who you are. Show her through your consistency, through your restraint, through your refusal to compromise what matters. And if she walks away, let her. Because a woman who doesn't respect your truth isn't worthy of your time. And the woman who is, she'll be drawn not to your perfection, but to your unwavering authenticity. So tonight, ask yourself, if I met me, would I respect me? And if not, what needs to change? Because when your life is rooted in principle, you don't need to impress anyone. You simply walk in truth and let the right people align with it. Part 9. Accept that rejection says nothing about your worth. Rejection stings, not because of what she said or did, but because of what you made it mean. And this is where most men fall. Not in the moment she pulls away, but in the story they tell themselves afterward. I wasn't enough. She never really cared. I must have done something wrong. These are not facts. They are emotional conclusions built on fear, ego, and wounded pride. But the Stoic man sees rejection for what it truly is, a neutral event, a moment, a shift in direction, nothing more, nothing less. And most importantly, it has nothing to do with his intrinsic worth. Because to the Stoic, value is internal. It does not fluctuate based on how others treat you. It is grounded in character, not compliments, in virtue, not validation. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. The same principle applies to rejection. It only has power over you if you assign it meaning, if you internalize it, if you make it a mirror for your identity. But it's not. It's a reflection of timing, compatibility, perception, sometimes even her own wounds or insecurities, and none of that is in your control. You don't control how she feels. You don't control her readiness. You don't control her preferences. In the calm assurance of a man who does not beg to be chosen because he already chose himself. Imagine this. 2 men stand before her. One is charming but reactive, confident until she pulls back. He texts relentlessly, over-explains, becomes anxious when she's distant. The other is measured. He expresses interest without expectation. He listens more than he speaks. He disappears when disrespected, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. What you do control is how you respond, with dignity or desperation, with presence or panic, with clarity or collapse. The Stoic man chooses dignity. He does not chase someone who walks away. He does not interrogate himself endlessly for answers. He does not shrink to fit what he was never meant to fit into. He accepts, adjusts, and continues forward because his direction does not depend on someone else's validation. It's important to understand this. Rejection is not failure. Rejection is information. It shows you who is aligned with your energy and who is not. It shows you where your emotional dependence still lives. It reveals the areas where you still seek approval more than alignment. And in that sense, it's a gift because it brings truth. And truth is what the Stoic man is always after, even when it hurts. There is no woman on this earth whose attention defines your value. The second you believe that, you give away your power. You begin negotiating your worth. You start auditioning instead of choosing. And in doing so, you betray yourself. The woman who's meant to walk beside you will not require you to abandon your self-respect. She will not make you prove your value with games, tests, or emotional acrobatics. She will recognize your presence, your steadiness, your peace, and she will feel safe in it, drawn to it, not because you begged, but because you became. Rejection is not the enemy. It is part of the refinement process. It strips away illusions. It burns through attachment. It forces you to build your self-worth on something no one can take from you. So the next time you're rejected by her words, her silence, or her coldness, pause, breathe, and remember, this moment is not about loss. It's about alignment, about redirection, about making room for someone who can meet you, respect you, walk with you. Ask yourself, am I truly upset that she left? Or am I upset that my ego didn't get what it wanted? Am I grieving her absence or the collapse of the fantasy I created? A Stoic asks these questions not to shame himself, but to liberate himself, to return to what matters, to let go of what doesn't. Because in the end, you don't need everyone to choose you. You just need to stop abandoning yourself. And when you no longer fear rejection, you stop settling. And when you stop settling, you attract from strength, not scarcity. And that changes everything. Part 10. You don't need to be loved to feel complete. This is the lie that breaks most men, that until she loves you, until she chooses you, until she sees you as worthy, you are somehow incomplete. That until love arrives, your life is just a waiting room. But the Stoics knew something deeper, something liberating. You were never born to be completed by another. You were born to complete yourself. You don't need to be loved to feel whole. You need to become whole. And from that place of grounded strength, you can then offer love, not as a plea, not as a transaction, but as a gift. Love that asks for nothing. Love that is not desperate for reciprocation. Love that does not crumble when it isn't returned. The man who believes he needs love to be complete walks through the world with a subtle anxiety. Every glance from a woman becomes a test. Every date becomes an audition. Every moment alone becomes a failure. And in that state, he is not living. He is waiting for a woman to save him from himself, waiting for approval, to finally believe in his own value, waiting to be chosen so he can finally feel that he matters. But the Stoic does not wait. He does not beg life to complete him. He chooses himself every single day through his thoughts, his actions, his standards, his inner silence. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your thoughts are rooted in lack, you will become lack. If your thoughts are rooted in fear, you will become fear. But if your thoughts are rooted in virtue, in truth, in discipline, in self-possession, then you will become complete, and no one will be able to take that from you. This doesn't mean you don't want love. It doesn't mean you don't desire intimacy. Of course you do, but it means you don't need it to know who you are. You don't depend on it to feel peace. You don't seek it to finally feel enough, because you already are. You see, a woman can sense when you are looking to her to complete you. She may not know exactly what she feels, but she will feel the weight of that need, and it will slowly begin to push her away. Which one feels like a man? Which one feels like safety? This is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming conscious. The Stoics never advocated for apathy. They advocated for presence, the ability to feel without being ruled. You can love deeply and remain still. You can desire fiercely and stay rooted. You can care without clinging. That is the art, and it is powerful. So, how do you develop this? Through daily discipline, not just in dating, but in life. Not because she doesn't care, but because that kind of emotional burden is not love, it is pressure, and pressure kills attraction. On the other hand, a man who is complete, who loves deeply but does not attach his identity to love, is rare. He is magnetic, he is calm, he is free. He can be alone without anxiety. He can express desire without losing himself. He can offer his heart without making it a negotiation. And if love is returned, he honors it. If not, he remains steady. That's what Stoic love looks like. Not empty, not detached, but sovereign. Real love from a man who has already met himself. Ask yourself, do I feel restless when I'm not in love? Do I define myself by how others respond to me? Do I believe I am incomplete until someone chooses me? If the answer is yes, don't shame yourself. Just wake up, begin again. Start reclaiming the parts of yourself you've outsourced to others. Start finding joy in your own path. Build habits that ground you. Embrace solitude that strengthens you. Cultivate stillness that restores you. Because only when you no longer need love to survive will you finally be ready to receive it in full. Part 11. Respond to rejection like a warrior, not a wounded boy. There will come a moment, maybe it's already come, when she pulls away, when the message you hoped for doesn't arrive, when she says, "I'm not feeling it anymore," or worse, disappears without a word. And in that moment, you will feel a flood of emotions: disappointment, confusion, anger, shame. You'll want to prove yourself. You'll want to fix it. You'll want to hear that it wasn't your fault, or maybe that it was. So at least you know why. But here's the Stoic truth. How you respond to rejection reveals more about your character than any victory ever could. And in that moment of rejection, you have a choice: to collapse into a wounded boy, or to rise as a grounded man. The wounded boy reacts. He overtexts. He overexplains. He spirals into self-doubt. He rants to his friends. He blames himself, or worse, blames her. He cannot hold the tension of not being wanted. He cannot sit with uncertainty. He needs closure, answers, validation, anything to ease the ache. But the Stoic man, the warrior, does none of that. He breathes. He feels the pain without dramatizing it. He accepts the reality without collapsing. He does not chase clarity from someone who has already shown him their truth. He creates his own clarity through stillness, through reflection, through the unshakable foundation of his inner world. Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb people. It is their judgments concerning them." Rejection is not the storm. It is the mirror. It reveals what part of you still needs to be accepted, where your identity still clings to outside approval. And that's the work, not to control her decision, but to control your meaning, to own your narrative. Maybe she rejected you because you weren't compatible, maybe because she wasn't ready, maybe because of her own shadows, or maybe because the universe, fate, logos, whatever name you give it, had something else planned for you. That's not yours to control. But your response? That's sacred territory. That's where your manhood is built. Rejection is a crucible, and most men either melt or harden into bitterness. But the Stoic uses rejection as a sharpening stone. He takes the pain and makes it a path. He alchemizes it into wisdom, strength, and resilience. He does not say, "She hurt me." He says, "This hurt woke me." You see, a real man doesn't measure his worth by how many women say yes. He measures it by how he holds himself when they say no. Not with arrogance, not with indifference, but with poise, with quiet dignity, with a gaze turned inward, asking, "What can I learn from this? What part of me was still reaching for something outside myself?" Because once you've felt the sting of rejection and chosen not to run, not to chase, not to collapse, you become dangerous, not to others, but to the part of you that was once needy, the boy inside who is still waiting for someone to choose him. And in facing that moment, you become the one who chooses. You choose your path. You choose your posture. You choose to walk forward without resentment, without shame, without compromise. That is Stoicism in action. That is masculinity in its purest form. So tonight, if you are grieving someone who walked away, if you are replaying words that cut deep, if you are questioning your value because of someone else's choice, pause. You are not broken. You are not lacking. You are simply being refined. And how you respond now will echo in every relationship to come. Breathe.